ASMR Advent / Vlogmas series. I hope you're all enjoying the videos so far. In today's video, I'm going to read some posts from the Let's Not Meet subreddit, so I hope you enjoy. The first one is called Clown in the Woods. I'm from the UK, if that's any context. So way back in 2016, when the whole killer clown epidemic was huge, I was walking through the woods at around 10 PM alone in order to get to a party / gathering that was happening in a secluded part of the forest. It was almost pitch black and I could barely see in front of me besides the flash on my phone, and everything seemed normal as I was walking to the party. I got to a long stretch of woods with no defined path, but it was the quickest way to get to the party, so I took it. As I got around midway through, I heard something to my left. I turned and saw a shadowy figure sat on a fallen log. I was understandably unnerved, but I couldn't make out if it was just shadows from the moonlight or if it was an actual person. I made the mistake of shining my phone light directly at it, and I was instantly terrified. Sat there alone in the middle of the woods was a largish man dressed as a clown, with a full face paint and sporting the creepiest smile imaginable. I tried to call 5 different people as I was passing him, and then I heard him get up behind me. I instantly started sprinting towards the end of the long stretch onto a path, which had a barbed wire fence down the side of it. During the sprint, I was pretending to be on the phone with one of my friends, and I could hear him running after me, but there was no chance in hell that I would be turning around to see if I was right. When I got to the path, I jumped over the fence as fast as I could and sliced my hands open as I did so. I then turned around and kept running backwards as I saw the clown, stood behind the fence just staring at me and smiling. I didn't stop running until I got to the party, and I was scared for a very long time after this. You have to bear in mind that there were so many rumours of people being killed by people dressed as clowns at the time, and while I will never know if the man had evil intentions or was just trying to scare me, it was extremely strange and scary to live through. So in conclusion, killer clown man from the woods, let's not meet. To be honest, I think that's scary, even if there wasn't the whole killer clown craze thing. I actually remember this clown thing in 2016, and realistically, the chances of coming across one were pretty low, because I lived in the middle of nowhere and we had to drive on country roads. I was always scared that we were going to come across someone, especially at night. And to be honest, this person was probably just trying to scare him rather than actually going to kill anyone. But you never know in the moment, do you? That is creepy. I would have had to get someone to take me home right away, because there's no way. Well, I wouldn't be going to a party in the middle of the woods anyway, but after that, no chance. The next one is called I Think I'm Being Stalked. So recently, I had a few encounters with a delivery guy. First was he asked me, "Are you my full name from my previous address? You moved her?" While smiling creepily. I thought he was just a delivery guy that was trying to do small talk, so I brushed him off. I'm living alone, so I thought I was just being overthinking by getting creeped out. Then I realised after I thought about it that he was my neighbour in my previous address. He striked up a conversation with me saying he knows one of my friends. I don't like talking to strangers, so I didn't talk with him long, but it stayed with me because I felt uncomfortable with him, like I felt he was dangerous. After that, I was going out and I saw him again, delivering to my neighbour, and I ignored him trying to walk by. He saw me and recognised me even if I was wearing a mask, and asked the same question again. After that, since I don't go out much, I don't see him as often. There was this one time he was standing in front of my neighbour's house, but I just walked by. Then I saw him in my Facebook friend requests, and I just ignored him again, but I was obviously creeped out, so I told my friend that he said he knew. At first my friend said she doesn't know anyone with that name, but his last name made her recognise him as a son of a family friend. They never talked. His family didn't know he was working as a delivery guy, and he was laid off because he became obsessed with his boss, which was older than his mum. I also lost my keys, so I asked my landlord for a replacement. I didn't think much of it until I got home to my door open. Obviously I was cautious, but there was no one at my apartment, so I sighed in relief, thinking maybe I left it open. I am night shift, so sometimes my mind is all over the place. Now that I'm thinking about it, I overlooked a lot of things, and I'm thinking of installing a CCTV in front of my apartment. I'm still scared though, because he knows my address. Update. My friend told me to report him to the police, but I'm too scared because they might just let him go and he'll take revenge on me. She also told me he might be doing drugs as told by his family since he's acting suspicious. The most I can do right now is change my locks and install a CCTV in front. Wish me luck, guys. After losing the keys and then coming back to the door open, I would have changed my locks instantly. That is creepy. Because what the hell was he doing in there? Because if he wasn't in there when she got back, what was he doing? It's probably best we don't know. That is so creepy. The next post is called Man in the Field. I work overnights at a 24-hour diner. You can probably guess what company. I'm used to weird people and odd things happening, but tonight was too much. The restaurant backs up to a field that has a tree line, and my cook and I went out back to smoke. We could hear someone yelling in the distance, but we get a lot of homeless people that come through town that are usually harmless, so we just shrugged it off as weird and went back inside. Later, I came out again to smoke and throw away some trash in the dumpster that is next to the field. It was stupid to go over to it, but I hadn't heard him again. As I'm walking away from the dumpster, I hear, "Hey, come here, hey, come here." It was much closer than when we heard him yelling the first time. I went inside and got my co-worker, who owns a car with a spotlight on it. We shined it out into the field, which again, not smart, and we admit that. But we couldn't see where he was. But he kept saying, "Hey girl, come here." I called the cops by this point because it was just too fucking weird. As soon as I get off the phone with them, he comes walking out of the field. He's an older man wearing a tan trench coat, and my co-worker and a customer ran back inside because this dude was hauling us across the parking lot. He started to come towards the door and I called the cops again. My cook cut him off and told him he needed to go. The man was acting erratically, yelling at my cook and said, "I'll end your life next time I see you, fucker." He kept moving his jacket by his waist, like he was flashing a weapon, but I couldn't see anything from inside. Cops came down the road and an officer came by and basically said the guy is homeless and not mentally stable. No shit. We told them everything that happened and my cook pressed charges on him. The officer told us that there wasn't anything they could do and he wouldn't give her his name, so they let him go. Basically ended it with, "Oh, by the way, he's known to carry a knife in his waistband. Call us if you need us. Bye." He came back, again hauling us across the neighbouring parking lot and back into the field. We could hear him screaming, yelling, "Hey, come here," again and again. We got busy when the bars closed and haven't heard him yelling since. But I know he's still back there because I'd caught him sleeping behind the dumpster before. My manager comes in the morning and I'm going to try to get her to let me take a picture of him off the security tapes so I can warn the other third shift workers. The field that he's camping out in also backs up to a middle school, but the cops said again there was nothing they could do. Hopefully he moves on and leaves us alone, or the cops can get him on something where no one gets hurt. I don't understand why the police can't do anything about it. If they wanted to press charges, surely you can't just get out of that by not telling them your name, or you don't know who the person is. I don't know anything about the US law, but that is crazy. The next post I'm going to read is called "Stalker Followed Me from Gym and I am Terrified." I normally take a walk every Friday to attend my weekly Pilates class. It's a 15 minutes power walk from my apartment in a relatively safe city from Eastern Europe. I've never ever felt unsafe in my city and I wouldn't normally exercise caution when walking alone at night. Tonight, however, after the end of class, I began my usual walk back home, and 5 minutes in and a lot of corner cutting and alley shortcuts, I noticed that this strange looking man is still following me. The first glimpse I got of him at that point was a young man in his 20s, incel looking, hat on, shiny elegant shoes on and a black coat. On a closer look he had a link chain, the kind of chain you use in heavy transportation and to pull heavy loads, around his neck. I instantly got shivers down my spine and changed my pace of walking to very slowly, then very fast to check if he does too. He changed his as well, and I could see from the corner of my eye he was still behind me. He was also on the phone and I got the feeling he was taking pictures of me. At this point I was completely freaked out, but my first thought was that I was athletic enough to put up with this creep and that I needed to stay focused. I was on the main boulevard parallel from my apartment and I decided to turn right in a very fast and abrupt way. He kept on walking and I thought I was just crazy and it was all in my head, but 2 minutes later he was still behind me. I must mention that there were people on the street at every corner, so even if he wanted to attempt something it would have been virtually impossible. When I reached my apartment I entered the house very fast, checked if he wasn't behind me and that was it. However, the scary part comes now. After an hour or so my husband checked our building's security camera and saw that as I rushed into picture of the entrance and the address engraved on it. I am now scared you'll start stalking me and my family. Any tips/advice is also appreciated. That's creepy as hell. Even if you think you're in the safest neighbourhood or the safest city ever, I would still have caution walking home late at night. You have no idea who's out there, even in the safest cities. And for anyone listening to this that might end up being in this situation, do not go to your address. If you can find some other public place or somewhere you can get help, do that. Do not go back to your house, because now he knows where you live. Hopefully this guy doesn't come back and do anything. The next one is the lady at my door. Back to when I lived in the rural Midwest about 10 years ago, I lived in a house right off of the highway. My house was right behind one town and another, almost right on the county line. Our house had a big circle driveway. If you drove in the driveway, you would be going straight towards our barn. If you curved right, you could pull into our garage. If you went past the garage, you could circle around in front of the house and pull back out to where you started. Our house had 2 large double doors in the front, which we rarely used. We always used the door that was inside the garage. One night, it was very late, my doorbell rang. My husband, my 3-year-old daughter and I were all asleep. It woke me up and I thought maybe I was dreaming. It rang again. I woke my husband up. He thought I was hearing things until it rang again. It was very dark outside, but we have a dusk to dawn light, so most of the driveway is pretty lit up. Unfortunately, you can't really see the front doors unless you open the door and look out. You can open just one at a time, or you can open them both by using 2 latch-like things that are in the top and the bottom of one of the doors. My husband gets up and I follow him. He decides he's going to open the door. I want to call the cops, but because we live on the county line, we know it's going to be a while before they can get there. He opens the door to a girl, maybe early 20s. She looks normal, except for the fact that she's standing at my door in the middle of the night. I look past her and a guy's pulled into the driveway, just off of the road, not up the house, not around the circle. She says she needs to use the phone. She says the car battery died or something. She's not sure, but she can't get it to start. I told my husband, no fucking way. This is how horror movies start, and we offered to call the cops, which would be the county sheriff. She asks over and over, but I'm not letting her in. We tell her we will call, and she kind of stomps off. We watch her walk back to the car, maybe 50 feet away. I'm a bad judge of distance, sorry. I can see her car, I can see her. I call the cops. They say they will be there as soon as they can, about 15 minutes. They don't sound very concerned, and at this point I'm not really either. I mean, it's just the girl. She probably does have a dead battery. She opens the trunk, no lights come on. She rummages around in the trunk, then the driver's side door opens, out steps a guy. Then the back passenger door opens, out steps one more guy. They all rummage around the trunk, no lights on. I can't hear anything. I can't hear them talking, and I can't tell what they are doing. They all get back in the car. Now at this point, maybe 5 minutes have gone by, and I'm silently praying that the sheriff puts his foot on the gas and gets here quick, but I know it's going to be another 10 minutes or so. They just sit there in the car, lights off, not moving. I can't see them when they are in the car, but I know they are in there. I know they didn't get out of the car and walk past the house, because they would have had to walk right under the dusk to dawn light. I would have seen them. I think I see the driver light a smoke. That part I'm not sure about. Then I see someone walking towards the car from the right, coming from the direction of the barn. It's a man. I have no idea who this man is. We don't have a neighbour for at least a mile, and he's coming from the back of my property, which ends in a creek. He walks under the dusk to dawn light, straight to the car. He doesn't look at the house, he just walks to the car and gets in the back. The car starts up and they slowly back out of my driveway and head north. The cops arrive about 10 minutes later, and at this point I'm freaking out. They search around but can't find anything. Ask us if we got a license plate, but they were parked too far away. Tell us to call if they come back. Sure, thanks. My husband goes and gets his shotgun from the shop on our property, and we try to go back to sleep. They never came back. I don't know who those people were, and I don't know what they wanted. Creepy people in a car without a dead battery. Let's never ever meet again. It sounds like they were probably gonna rob them. I assume the other guy was probably around the back of the house, and the girl was gonna try and get in the house and then let him in or let all the others in. I don't know. But that is creepy. I would never answer the door at night. To be honest, even if I knew the person at the door, I probably wouldn't answer it. You just never know what people are gonna do. called The Last Tram. So this happened years ago when I was a dumb teen girl who loved walking the city alone after dark. This took place in Eastern Europe, for context, in a city with a tramway system. On this one night, I sat in a tram station waiting to catch the last tram home. 3 trams stopped at this station, 2 of which went where I was going. Important info for later. It was around 10 PM, and as I sat there waiting, lost in thought, I barely registered a man quietly walking up and standing by the shelter. I thought nothing of it, just someone else waiting for the tram, until I started feeling weird. The streets were quiet and dark, and there was no one else in sight, just me and this guy. And I started wondering why he chose to stand this close to me when he had so much space to avoid dealing with people. I couldn't comprehend anyone wanting to socialise this late at night, given that I was not very social myself. So I glanced at him, trying not to overthink it. He was a bald-headed, beady-eyed giant, tall and built like a bear, big belly and big arms and legs. I was 5'2" and scrawny, but that wasn't what scared me. It was the fact that he was staring right at me, unblinking and expressionless, not even attempting to look away or act embarrassed. No, this guy wanted me to feel uncomfortable. I instantly felt weak and shaky, cold shivers down my spine. This was not normal. I realised quickly that I was not in a good situation. I couldn't miss the last tram, walking home was out of the question, and my phone was almost dead. I was a shy kid and didn't have what it takes to scare this guy away. I knew that, but I had to at least try. I only managed to utter a small hi, trying my best to startle him out of whatever he was thinking, but my attempt failed in the face of his silent, threatening aura. He kept staring, no sign of intent to reply. He was enjoying this. Feeling the panic rising inside me, I told myself to stay calm and think rationally. Maybe he didn't hear me. Minutes passed, his stare continued to burn on my skin, and there was no tram in sight. Ignoring him didn't work. So I mustered the courage to speak once again, this time louder. "What do you want? Stop staring." No answer. He definitely heard me this time. I felt myself start to get angry. I didn't want to let this guy get to me anymore. I didn't want to continue to give him the satisfaction of watching me squirm nervously and pretend that his behaviour didn't bother me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to start thinking. I knew what I can't do. I can't fight him off if he makes a move, and there's nothing I can say or do that will get him to stop. I didn't know what his intentions were, but I knew they weren't good. If I tried to walk away, he would probably follow. I could run, but he would most likely catch up to me before I can tire him out, since his legs were much longer than mine. Even if I managed to somehow lose him, walking through dark alleys past the junkies that were always prowling about could land me in an even worse situation. I could pretend to call someone, but he might feel compelled to act much sooner if he felt threatened. So what can I do? The only thing I could realistically be able to do was to try and outsmart him somehow. So I started developing a few plans, depending on which trams showed up, trying to confirm whether he was just amusing himself and actually waiting for a tram too. Popped over for other, more suspicious reasons, and whether I could get any kind of help. I couldn't let him see where I lived, so if he followed me, I'd have to be prepared to employ whatever strategy available, and for that I needed to stay rational and aware of my surroundings. While I was still thinking, the first tram showed up. It was one I could have taken home, but this one pulled into the depot right in my neighbourhood, forcing me to lead him to my home. I hoped he would board it and leave me be, but he didn't. He kept watching me carefully. I let the tram go, desperately hoping it wasn't the last one to head home. He continued to watch, and I sensed that he was quite happy with how things were going. I put up with it for another 15 minutes, trying to focus on another plan of action. I could now pretend that I needed the other tram, the one going to a different area of the city, and just ride to the next station, getting off as soon as possible so I don't end up too far and miss the tram I need. This tram showed up next. With my heart in my throat, I boarded it and sat down by the door. He got on it too, but sat himself in the back, pretty far from where I was. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking this might still go well. When the tram reached the next station, I got up and out, not looking back and hoping it was all over. But when I stopped on the pavement and watched the tram drive away, I couldn't see him in it. I turned my head slowly and was terrified to see him walking towards me, looking slightly pissed off. He stopped just a few steps away and resumed staring, this time with a clear hint of malice, still in silence. My vision blurred as I fought back tears of despair. He was not going to let me go. The helplessness I felt was unbearable, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't give up. way, I had to get home tonight. The prospect of what might happen to me any time now if I didn't was becoming too real. My head was full of unanswered questions, regrets and horrible scenarios. I wanted so badly to not have to think anymore, to not have to fight back the tears and stay composed, but I knew this would be his cue to enact whatever fucked up plan he had in mind. I couldn't let that happen. Then I saw the final tram approach, the only one I could take now, and got on as quickly as my trembling legs would allow me to. When I was in, bright lights enveloping me, my mind snapped out of its nightmarish spiral of fear and allowed me a moment of clarity. I had 3 stops to figure this out. I sat down at the front and looked at the driver. He was a frail old man, blissfully unaware of my distress. Getting the driver's attention was a no-go. We passed 1 stop. There was no one else waiting to climb aboard. I turned around, fully expecting to see that the psycho had followed me again, but I did not expect him to be sitting right behind me. He was not taking any chances. He was making sure I won't try anything like last time. I shot him a hateful glare and allowed my anger to overcome my fear. I stood up and purposely walked over to another seat, in the middle of the tram car. I wanted to make it clear I will not put up with this BS any longer. He got up too and slowly walked up to a spot 2 seats behind and diagonally from me, then sat down with the tiniest arrogant grin on his face. Already expecting it, I shot up and stood by the middle door instead, determined to keep him on his toes. If I stood right by the door, he won't have any idea which station I planned to get off at. He remained where he was this time, convinced that I was bluffing. After all, this was really the last tram. There was nothing else I could possibly do to escape now. He must have reckoned, so my defiance was just a funny act to him. This was my chance. I had to take the risk. It had to work. There were 3 doors on the tram, and they all opened and closed at the same time, and stayed open for around 5 seconds before closing again, if no buttons were pressed or people detected on the threshold. The next stop, the only one left before mine, came into view. The tram slowed to a stop. The doors opened. I made no move. 5 long seconds passed. The doors started to close. I bolted out and ran for it, reaching the back door as fast as I could, and slamming the button to open it again. My whole body tense with adrenaline, I waited a long, painful second, and jumped back in, keeping my head low, holding my breath, and crouching behind the nearest seat. I shut my eyes tightly and exhaled slowly while thanking the gods I didn't believe in for that button working, and wishing with all my might for him to not have seen me before I got back in. As I was waiting to hear his footsteps approaching, I pictured him frantically looking for me. Was he still on the tram, face screwed up in anger, head turning like a fat ugly meerkat? Or was he catching his breath on the pavement of the last station, mad eyes searching the darkness for me? As the tram continued its loud journey, banging and clanging in sync with my heartbeat, I dared smile to myself, imagining his face when he realised he fucked up. Hand on my chest, I did my best to stealthily look around the corner and found no one looking back. I stood up in excitement and threw myself at the foggy back window. There he was, standing alone and victimless on that slowly fading out of sight station, watching me leave him and his vile plans behind. Giving someone the middle finger never felt so good. I made it home and told no one my story, for fear I'd be admonished for my naivety, but I was safe, I was proud of myself, and I learned my lesson. Creepy stranger, I hope the events of that day taught you to not underestimate girls, and prevented you becoming a criminal for the rest of your life. Let's never meet again. What is wrong with people? What do you get out of doing that? Like, if he didn't have a plan to actually do something and was just trying to creep her out, why do people enjoy that? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. Okay, the last post I'm going to read is called I Still Wonder What Could Have Happened. In 2018, I lived with my partner and my German Shepherd in the Humboldt Park neighborhood of Chicago. I was 33 years old and our apartment was a 4th floor walk-up unit. Very typical low-budget Chicago rental in a changing neighborhood. The layout of our building is going to matter to this story. Our building had a total of 12 units. Mine and the 3 below me had a shared front entrance, and the other 8 units were through a second entrance. All 12 apartments had connected back porches and stairs that shared a walkway to a rear gate, which led to an alley. From the front stairwell, there are windows on each landing to the back porches, so you can see the back door of my apartment when standing at the front door through that window. We had good relations with our neighbours, especially those that lived directly below us and shared our front door. This was the thing that saved all 3 of us, my partner, my dog and me. My partner was in a touring band at the time and would leave for weekends or weeks at a time. was a scary thing for me because I was essayed and stalked by an ex in my teens and 20s. I always worried something would tip him off and he'd start stalking me again. A little less than a month before a 2-week tour my partner had scheduled, I received a creepy Facebook message from that stalker ex from yet another new account. About a week after that, my car was broken into. The glove box was emptied, things were thrown around, but the only thing that was taken was a bag of dog treats. I had about $20 in change in the compartment between the seats, and they left the money. I was on high alert at that point, and very scared about the time I'd be alone during the tour. My partner was kind of irritated with me and the situation and felt that it was too last minute to cancel, especially over what amounted to a bad feeling and a few isolated things that weren't direct threats. And truthfully, car break-ins are very common in Chicago. It's happened to me like 15 times, and police usually do the reports over the phone and don't even come to the scene. What I found really strange was that the thief didn't take the money. There was a homeless man who had started camping on the boulevard nearby recently. My partner left for his tour and I set up cameras and bought door braces for my front and back doors. I became completely nocturnal, unable to sleep at night. My poor dog developed diarrhea, maybe because she was picking up on my stress level. It meant that I was taking her down all 4 flights of stairs for her to go blast her bowels 6 or 7 times a night. I had the distinct prickly crawling sensation of being watched when I would take her out, but I couldn't tell what was genuine and what was my own fear and paranoia. Her diarrhea lasted an unusually long time, like 3 or 4 days. I was going in and out of the main door a lot, feeling very scared, and I noticed that some of my neighbours wouldn't pull the door all the way closed, so the lock engaged. I mentioned it to my downstairs neighbour one day, including that I was extra careful because of the stalker. He was supportive, said he'd mention it to the other neighbours if he saw them, and I noticed that the door was locked more frequently after that. My partner came home at about 11 AM on a Sunday morning. At about 8:30 AM that morning, my first floor neighbour's place was burglarised. He was a metalhead dude who collected instruments, sold weed and psychedelics, and lived alone. I guess he went out for breakfast and he left his door unlocked while he was gone. Someone had come in, eaten the leftovers in his fridge, took a coat and a pair of boots, and left a filthy coat and a pair of boots, took his college diploma but left $500 in the same cabinet. They left all the expensive musical instruments and mixing equipment, left the drugs but did take a set of keys. The keys were to the first floor apartment and a master key for front door and the back gate. My neighbours ran into each other after the break-in, and the second floor neighbour said to go tell No Donut because she has a stalker, so my metalhead neighbour came up to let me know what had happened. My partner had just gotten home from his tour when he knocked at the front door. I jumped out of my skin but looked through the peephole, recognised him, and the 3 of us stood on the stairs at my front door while he told us about the break-in. We jabber-jawed for a while, about 15 to 20 minutes. While we were talking, we heard the front door open and close below us, but thought nothing of it. Then we saw a man climbing up my back porch steps to my back door through the window. There was no other apartment he could have been going to, and he had to walk past all 11 more accessible units on his way to mine. He was not my stalker. I did not recognise him, but his image is burned in my mind. He was wearing flashy black and white high-top sneakers, not the ones stolen from downstairs. His black coat was oversized and hanging off his shoulders. We locked eyes through the window and he froze halfway up the stairs to my back porch. He slowly took a cell phone and called someone as he slowly turned around halfway up the steps. He walked back down the stairs in artificially slow motion, like he was pretending to be nonchalant, and then bolted into a sprint as soon as he hit the porch below mine. My neighbour ran downstairs and dialed 911. My partner and I ran through the apartment to the back porch and saw a sedan and a windowless van pull out from the sketchy building 2 doors down. Both cars floored it out of the alley. We didn't get the plates, but the cops said it wouldn't have mattered. There wasn't any crime committed and nothing concrete to justify stopping them. They very condescendingly explained this to me as they took my statement later. My neighbour is the one who actually made the call, and as the police report, my partner and I were just considered witnesses. For a long time, the thing that scared me the most was the tool that my neighbour found when we went running downstairs. It was a 2x4 piece of wood, cut to about 2 feet, but about 6 inches of it had been made into a handle. It looked like a paddle, and for a long time I couldn't figure out what it was, but I'm pretty sure and before they could catch me unaware, they seemed to have aborted the plan. I suspect they'd been watching me, especially while I was taking out my dog, and figured that I was alone. It was pure coincidence that my partner had gotten home 30 minutes before all this. I felt that we all could have been horribly injured or worse had we been trapped inside, and they had gotten the jump on us. Nothing else ever came of it, except that my landlord refused to change the locks, but he did agree to let us out of our lease. I moved out of Chicago and now have added a younger dog I'm training to do some bite work. My house is surrounded by cameras and floodlights and wingnut neighbours. So whoever was on my back porch and whatever they had planned, let's not meet. That is awful. Why on earth did the landlord refuse to change the locks? Like, you've had break-ins. You'd think at that point, no matter what, you would change them. Obviously he didn't want to use his money. I'm glad that they managed to get out of their lease though, so they don't have to worry about that happening again. It's fucking creepy.